What's up, everybody? It's lead meteorologist John Choquette here with CEO Derik Klein, and we have a lot to talk about. We have Hurricane Milton. Just about 24, 36 hours ago, it was a tropical storm, and very quickly we have immediately jumped to the upper echelons of Category 5. We are shattering records left and right already here for the month of October, and there's a lot more to discuss. Florida is really the big target for this, and Derik is actually going to be heading out to the Tampa area tomorrow, so it kind of gives you an idea for basically Hail Trace's version of the Jim Cantori, Where Is He Now? So with that, I'm going to let Derik kind of take this over since he has been digging deep here all day trying to see where he's going to go and really watching what's going on here. And it looks like we also have a new reconnaissance flight with our Hurricane Hunter heading into Milton. So we're going to see if he's going to continue to strengthen. But with that, take it away, Derik. I'm going to have your screen up here in a second, too.
Thanks, John. So we kind of fire things off here. I mean, definitely just to kind of put this into perspective here. So Hurricane Milton right now is it's better than top four. So it was 175 at the 1 p.m. update today. That made it a top four strongest hurricane in the Atlantic, but it's now up to 180. Pressure is down to 905 millibars. And what that basically means is, as far as strength, is it's a top 7 hurricane for lowest pressure. And it's very, very close. In fact, it might already be in the 800s, which is rare, super rare. So we've had 2 Cat 5 hurricanes in about the last, well, longer than the last decade, but I know for sure the last decade, right? To make landfall. None of them, or there's 3 that I can think of actually that have made landfall, but none of them actually went to the 800 range. So that just kind of puts into perspective how strong this is. But again, sustained winds at 180 miles per hour, which means gusts well over 200 miles per hour with this hurricane. And what does it mean for getting that strong, that fast, as far as implications to the United States? Well, what it means is that the weakening that we're expecting is going to start from the 180, 185 mile per hour range. I think it's probably still going to get a little stronger. So it's going to go from 185 down to whatever it goes down to. But 2 things that means is a lot higher starting point, right? So imagine Milton's going to fall off of a mountain when it gets into the wind shear, and it's if it was on a 10,000 foot mountain, it could fall down to 8,000 foot or 7,000 foot, right? But Milton's now on a 13,500 foot mountain and potentially could be a 14,000 foot mountain. And so if it falls off, it may only get down to 11,000 or 12,000 feet. So the example is the wind speeds, instead of falling from 125 falling down to 100, they might fall from 185 down to 140. Right, so big difference when it comes to landfall, especially when we're talking about a very highly populated area of the Florida coast. And I don't want to underplay Helene, but it made landfall in a fairly unpopulated part of the coast. This could make landfall in one of the largest cities in the Gulf Coast.
And just to perspective, Tampa hasn't had a direct hit from a major hurricane since the 1920s. It's been over 100 years. So there's very likely no one alive in Tampa right now who experienced a kind of impact that may very well end up happening here in the next 48 hours.
Exactly. And, and that was 115. And I'll say right now, the latest update that came out here. So you can see I've got the warnings here, the warnings page. So this has, just to show you, so current location is at 4 p.m. on Monday. Strength is right here. So we're at 180 mile per hour winds, sustained winds. That's not gusts. The gusts are higher. And then we've got hurricane watches and warnings for the Florida Keys. We've got hurricane watches really from near Fort Myers, or even just a little south near Naples, all the way to well north of Tampa. We've also got hurricane watches now issued on the east coast of Florida. So that's Jacksonville all the way down to, I don't know, Palm Beach area. I'm not looking at the exact warning and the exact timing, And then inland hurricane warnings, those include Orlando. So if you're in Orlando, you're under a hurricane warning now. And that's going to go all the way across. Daytona is going to go under a hurricane warning. Potentially all the way up to Jacksonville will be under a hurricane warning. And so, but if you notice here, our little dot, you can't see Tampa, and that's because it's right underneath it. And they're now forecasting this to be a Cat 4 hurricane at landfall. What was looking like it was going to be maybe a high-end Cat 1, low-end Cat 2 because of the shear and the weakening that was going on. Doesn't look like that now. It looks like it's going to be a high-end Cat 3 or even a healthy Cat 4 potentially. So we'll have to see kind of how eye wall cycles will happen, and depending on the structure when the wind shear hits is going to determine a lot.
Yeah, I mean the fact that right now Milton has effectively no wind shear. It was a perfect environment for a hurricane to rapidly intensify, which is why it did. And even within that, the hurricane models, as advanced as they are, were unable to really get the breadth of the level of intensity that Milton was able to achieve within about a day. So with the more intense observations of Milton, the models are starting to kind of play catch up to what occurred. And that has led to, again, like you had mentioned, the mountain, basically, we're going to start higher up, and now it's able to sustain itself. And once it starts to hit that shear, yes, it will start to weaken. And yes, it'll very likely, people will be like, well, it's not going to be a Cat 5 at landfall. It doesn't matter. It's going to start to get bigger. And again, there's a difference between a borderline dying Cat 3 and a Cat 4 hurricane. You can probably talk to anybody who's lived through the more intense hurricanes of the last handful of years. It gets rough, and the storm surge with this, I think, the track that it's currently pretty consistently showing may be a near worst case scenario for somebody on the west coast of Florida. Whether or not that's Tampa Bay remains to be seen. It's got just a couple of wobbles here and there could make a huge world of difference for where that worst storm surge is going to be.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's and really landfall, right? As far as, I mean, we're talking about several different perils that are going to impact, right? So you've got your storm surge, which is going to be catastrophic. And actually, I'm going to bounce over here. This just shows you the wind shear right now, 6 knots, which is just unheard of. And the model missed it, right? The model said the pressure on this particular run was at 927 right now. We're at 905. So that's estimated to 905. It might be in the 800s right now. So just to tell you, this is one of the more aggressive models too when it came to the strength of the hurricane, and it outdid the aggressive version. So, but check out the new peak storm surge. I mean, 10 to 15 feet. So imagine, 15 feet, guys. That's higher than a basketball goal, right? Like I can't dunk on a 10 foot. I can't dunk on a 15 foot, but I can't dunk on a I can't dunk on a 9-foot goal. So who are we kidding? That needs to be quoted, I think. But white meteorologist can't jump, I think. Oh, there's another one. Quote me again. Anyway, so 10 to 15 feet, like that is a massive amount of water, and the size and the speed that it's going to have as it comes on shore is going to make that water just rush on and just inundate wherever it is and just to the south of the eye. So the eye's landfall really, really matters when it comes to this, especially when we're talking about Tampa Bay, because the bay is actually like a cup. So it'll actually hold more water than surrounding locations if the water is being pumped into it. So that's the really big concern, is that water is going to be pumped into it. And this isn't an exact science, right? So Helene, we estimated the surge to be 5 to 7 foot. It ended up being 8 foot for Helene in Tampa Bay. So
that was the record for that area too.
Yeah. So this obviously is forecast to be much higher. But if the landfall location, if it ends up making landfall, say in Sarasota, well, then we have a different story. So we have an offshore. Now they will still have water come in after the hurricane gets inland, but at a much at a much slower pace. While there will be flooding, you're talking about 4 to 6 foot, not not 10 to 15 foot. So the location matters, and models are kind of showing a bunch of different scenarios right now. And they've struggled, to some extent with this. I'm not sure if I actually have the page up.
And just one note while you're looking, we have a lot of folks watching right now. You can put comments in. I can see the comments that are coming in. So I tried to make the screen a little larger. Somebody said the picture was so little, so I tried to make that bigger. Derik can probably zoom in on his screen as well for some of the images that show certain locations. But yes, any questions you guys have, feel free, put them in the chat. We're going to try to answer as many as we can. There we go. All right, we'll bring this in a little more. Okay, you can keep going.
Yeah, so this is the big concern, right? Is with this high level of storm surge, but then the winds are another peril, and I'm going to get to the winds here in just a second. I want to just real briefly touch on the flooding as well. Thankfully, this one's going to be moving a little bit quicker. While flooding will be an issue, I mean, we're still talking 5 to 6, 8 inches of rain, which is a lot of rain, and don't forget, a lot of people aren't familiar with this, but Florida's been having a lot of rain the last 2 or 3 days as well. They've been under flash flood watch for the last several days because they've been getting a lot of rain. Sounds, rinse and repeat, right? North Carolina, the Appalachian Mountains, they were having flooding issues before Helene got there. Well, Florida's kind of doing the same thing here. Now, they don't have mountains, so I don't expect the level of flash flooding that they had in North Carolina, but still, that's a lot of water. And so flooding is going to be an issue with this system. But then as we get into the winds, as this encounters the wind shear, I expect to see the wind field expand. Right? So it's going to grow out. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's going to impact a larger portion of the coast. So if it makes landfall in Clearwater, major storm surge in Tampa, and then still major winds, but those major winds will go all the way down to Sarasota. They'll go all the way up the coast. So I mean, you're talking about a 60 mile wide path of pretty high end winds with this system, which is a little bit bigger than some of the last few. So now obviously Helene had a pretty big wind swath, and that's going to go all the way across. So we're talking winds 130 miles per hour possible in Tampa or Sarasota or Clearwater. But we're talking winds over 100 miles per hour in Orlando. 110, 115 in Orlando, not out of the question.
It really just depends on the speed and really the intensity at landfall, because you're going to have, yes, you will have that shear impacting the hurricane at landfall, but there is also the potential, even in the dry section of the hurricane, because the shear that Milton is going to encounter is based off of more or less the seasonal trough. So it's going to help push that wind towards the surface. We could have a real localized maxima of wind, even in the dry section of the storm, which would be on the southern end of the storm. So it's pretty much anywhere within where the eye is going to be have potentially very strong gusty winds. So it could and really push pretty far inland as well. Hurricane force probably all the way to the other side.
I kind of tried to highlight it here in this box here. That's kind of the area that we're focused on, right? Is that larger inner core. Now you can see here, let's do that. But so you've got the two bands. Like this will be the strongest winds, but the hurricane force winds will extend well out into this outer ring here. Now this isn't exactly what it's going to look like. In fact, it's much weaker, as you can tell. Like by the time this gets up to Florida, I don't think we're going to be talking about a system that looks like this.
No,
against Florida, but again, this didn't initialize properly with the hurricane itself. So expecting worse conditions than this, but it is going to have some dry air trying to get there. I just don't know if it's going to have enough time to get there.
And the really strong hurricanes have a tendency to kind of have their own little environment. They're able to insulate themselves a little bit from some of the more harsh conditions.
Exactly, and you kind of expect that to do this, and I'll be curious too. Some different things that'll happen. You'll have eye wall cycles that will happen, and that'll actually expand the wind field. And if those happen in the light wind shear environment and allow it to keep some of its intensity when that happens, that may also insulate it even better as it gets larger. The smaller the hurricane, the more likely the wind shear will impact it. And then obviously the stronger the hurricane, the less likely, but then also the larger it is, the less likely. So if you have a large, strong hurricane, it's more likely to insulate out some of that wind shear and make it take a little bit longer for that wind shear to get to it.
Yeah. So, oh man, look at that. So that's for the people watching. This is probably some of the more classic looking pictures of a hurricane you can see on satellite.
Yeah, so very, very small eye, only a handful of miles across, probably 5, 6, 7 miles across. So it's a very, very tight eye. A couple of things, I put the latitude and longitude on here so we could kind of track the direction that it's going, because it had been moving east, southeast. And there was even a potential that it might have hit. This is the Yucatan Peninsula right down here. I'll kind of zoom in here. This is the Yucatan Peninsula right here. And there was a chance that it was going to actually make landfall somewhere over here. Like it was going to get really close on the current path. But if you notice here, the last handful of frames, it's kind of like, see how far down it was, and then now it's really moving up towards this line now. It's got just a tad bit more of a north tilt than it is just east, and it had been just a tad bit of a south tilt. So it has started that. I'm not going to move south. And now again, who knows if that'll continue? But as of right now, that's what it's doing. That's worth noting because if it would have kind of scraped the coast here, that could have also disrupted it. But now that doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, and those tiny little wobbles make a world of difference. I mean, even with Helene just a couple weeks ago, we had a tiny little wobble to the east at last second, and that pretty much was make or break the difference between Tallahassee getting completely rocked with the strongest winds to Perry getting hit with the strongest winds, and then like Valdosta, and really where all the Atlanta didn't even really get hit with crazy winds because of the fact that that tiny little wobble helped make a world of difference. I do have one question that came in here. Does it actually show up on the screen? Hey, it does. Look at that. How Hurricane Michael compare to this?
Yeah, so I mean, as of right now, this is a stronger hurricane than Hurricane Michael. This is more on the scale of Dorian, which didn't make landfall in the U.S., but a lot of you might remember the Bahamas, which were just complete devastation in the Bahamas. So it's closer to that level than it is to Michael. Michael was 160 at landfall, and this is currently at 180. Which is a pretty significant impact difference. And also we haven't even touched on this, and I can't believe we've gone this far without touching on this. Is in Florida itself, what you have to remember is after Hurricane Andrew, Florida underwent a drastic process, and actually Hurricane Charlie I think had an even bigger impact on this in 2003 or 2004. I don't remember which year exactly. But they revamped all of their building codes in Florida, and they're some of the strongest in the country. And when hurricanes impact, they don't have the same impact on the areas that have those new building codes. So, for example, Ian made landfall near Punta Gorda, right? But had been hit by Charlie, so the rebuild included the new building codes.
Yes.
And so while there were severe impacts, in fact, I think it was a $75 billion hurricane, they weren't as severe as they would have been. Tampa, however, has not had a hurricane in 100 years. Tampa was not built with the new building code. What the new stuff is, right? The 2004 stuff has been built that way, but everything that's older than that is built on a different building code. So
that makes a big difference.
It does. It absolutely does. So you're going to talk about a lot more home damage to areas that maybe weren't going to have that same level of home damage.
Yeah.
So instead of maybe shingles coming off, you may see entire roofs come off, right? Could be the difference, which is debris that gets blown onto other things. It's a real scary situation. So,
and it also leads to the fact that the storm surge from Helene was record breaking in the Tampa area, and that happened only a couple weeks ago. not even 2 weeks ago, and the debris is just everywhere. Right. So you have all this stuff that's already loose, just kind of probably just scattered up in piles while people are trying to just clean up and assess. And then now having to mass evacuate, and there's a bunch of just more stuff around.
Yeah, exactly. Now here I've kind of zoomed in on all the tropical models. So this is the 18Z run that's come out. So it's initialized the data as far as intensity, as far as track. So where the system currently is. Now the black line, which is right up here, this black dot right on the coast, that's the National Hurricane Center's forecast at 60 hours. Now the one thing that I want you to pay attention to is that black dot is fairly far north compared to everything else. Everything else is down here. Okay, so these blue lines right here, blue and pink, and even this purple line, worst case scenario for Fort Myers. Not Tampa, right? So from Tampa all the way down to Fort Myers, you got to be watching this thing. In Ian, a lot of people in Fort Myers thought it was going to hit Tampa, and at the last second it turned and went into Fort Myers. A lot of people were caught off guard. You don't want to be that person on either of those locations, because again, this is going to be up there. It may not be as strong, but it's not going to be far off from what Ian was when it made landfall. So it's going to have catastrophic effects, and the storm surge is going to be every bit of what Ian had. So it's going to be a similar situation, whether it's in Fort Myers or whether it's in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, so that's very, and the water is what kills. That I think again, Helene, we haven't even finished the recovery process. Not the recovery process, the recovery of, unfortunately, those who lost their lives process, to know that water is what kills. I had one question just come in. Will this come up to Kentucky at all? No. This is this may be a strictly Florida level event.
Yeah, you'll see maybe some effects on the Georgia coast, South Carolina coast, maybe with some waves and beach erosion and stuff like that. But this one's definitely going to be stuck with Florida, it looks like.
Okay, so what are we looking at here, Derek?
So we had the intensity models, and again, let me go back to that here. Which tab that was? There we go. So you can see now they've got it initialized. It's not quite there, right? We're higher than 150 knots, so it should actually be up here. A lot of the models though did go up. So
you should mention that 18Z in normal people terms is 1 p.m. Central Time. So this was at 1 p.m. today, and this thing has continued to increase in intensity since then.
And it's, again, I think it's probably stronger than what they have it at right now, based off the last flight that went through and how much it was intensifying. But you can see here at 60 hours, this is the time frame that landfall happens in Florida, right? So it's right in here is where they're showing it. And the majority of the models, you got a handful that have it down, but these models are showing landfall already occurring.
Yeah.
This is where landfall occurs. It's in between this 48 and 60.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why the models are showing like a quick drop off. So in peak intensity happens in about 12 to 24 hours. And then we have a slow drop off for the next 24 hours. And then we have landfall in between that time frame. So basically leading up to landfall, everything has it still at a Cat 4. Even a few still have it as a Cat 5. So I think Cat 5 is probably a little bit intense, but this is probably going to be a healthy Cat 4 hurricane at landfall.
At landfall are very close to landfall. Either way, there's a big difference between a decaying Cat 4 going into a Cat 3 than a decaying Cat 3 or Cat 2 going into a Cat 1. It's the wind. Can't underestimate the wind.
Yeah, anything once you get over that 100, 110, 115 mile per hour mark, there's a reason why we call it a major at that point. The wind damage just goes up exponentially. It starts to look more like tornado damage and less like just a bad storm.
Yeah,
it's pretty intense. Now we've also got here. So this is our plane. You can see you took off from Tampa. I'm gonna refresh here and see.
See where they're at. They're getting closer.
They restarted. So what we'll do here is I'm going to switch our view here. We're going to look at a different product and see. It may not be showing up yet, but there's some other things that we're going to look at. So we're going to switch to a product called GR Earth. This is going to be a really, really fun tool, especially over the next several days. So this has got, you can see we've got our hurricane path here. So here's the location of the hurricane currently. So category 5, category 5, category 5.
Hang on, I need to switch you on.
Oh.
There we go.
All right. So we've got the location, the current location of the hurricane, category 5. The purple is the really, really strong winds. Stays at category 5 all the way up for the next 33 hours, essentially. And then we weaken to a Cat 4. This is 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, still pretty far off the coast of Florida here. So the landfall timing has slowed down just a little bit. And then at, let's see here, this is at 6. So this is 1 a.m. We've got, which means late night for me. But 1 a.m., we've got this system making landfall currently. But again, remember, this is one of the further north points, right? So most of the models have it making landfall down in this area. Bradenton, Sarasota, kind of zoom in here, maybe Punta Gorda again, unfortunately. See if we can get some, Venice Beach, somewhere right in here, which would be better case to still have some severe winds if that happens in Tampa, but might be a little bit better off storm surge wise, but would be worst case for Port Charlotte. This is Port Charlotte right here, Punta Gorda. Let's see, you have Charlotte. Is it just called Charlotte? Yeah, Charlotte Beach is right up in here, and then Fort Myers is down here. So again, landfall is possible in any of those locations.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing to really hammer home for people watching is anywhere between north of Tampa down to about Fort Myers, you need to be treating this like this is going to directly impact you, regardless of where it wobbles to.
Yep. And so this is from the last flight that went through. And so you can see these are the center fixes, the little V's are the center fixes. And this was just absolutely incredible. So you've got a center fix right back here. This was at 947 millibars. Okay. And then the next flight through just a little bit later, 943. And then the next one through was at 935. And the next one through was at 925. And then the next one through was at 912. That is unheard of deepening of a hurricane. Unheard of. It doesn't, I guess one of the more intense ones. And then look at some of these wind speeds, 177, that's 200 mile per hour winds.
Yeah. Like that's,
this thing was going, right?
It's still going.
Yes. And we can tell that because of the amount. So this is where the eye is. Now the satellite can be a little bit off the exact location. So the eye is probably right here, just a little south of where the satellite shows it. And you can see lightning surrounding the entire thing, which means it is very intense in the center still, and still strengthening, if anything. So they've got it at 905 right here, but I think it's stronger than that right now.
Yeah, the plane will be getting in there pretty soon. We'll be getting new measurements probably after our live is over, but definitely through the evening hours here.
Yeah, I think it'll be there probably about an hour.
Yeah, I'm not envious of the hurricaners on this one. It's probably gonna be a really intense flight. You have these really small hurricanes. You have a really tight pressure gradient, which means the flight is not fun. So.
What's crazy is within a matter of a half a mile or so. So they fly at the same pressure gradient. And so they will actually drop 1,000 feet down to the center.
Yeah.
Imagine they are basically free falling down into the center of this hurricane to stay at the same pressure gradient. And of course they are getting bounced and it'll be. In fact, they talked about it as being one of the most violent rides this crew that's on their way out right now. It'll be one of the most violent rides that they've ever done when penetrating a hurricane. So, obviously, we want to pray for their safety because this is going to be an intense ride. And I mean, these planes are built to withstand it, but they don't get to do a lot of these either. So.
Fingers crossed that things end up okay. But I mean, this to show how intense Milton was deepening earlier today. The hurricane hunters reported they at flight level, mind you, they were hitting hail.
Yeah.
That was just how convectively intense the storm was. Obviously, the hail is not making it down to the surface or anything, but just shows just how powerful Milton's really tight inner core was.
Yep. I mean, it's something that's unheard of for sure.
Yeah. So I got another question that came in. It's like, let's see if I can actually show it here. Hey, do you know how much rain the Tampa area will be getting prior to the hurricane making landfall?
We can probably do total. Let me get the total. I can give you the total rainfall. Give me just a second here. We can kind of probably, oops. I'll find the right data set here.
Looks like so we have while Derik's getting that ready, looks like we have a ton of people watching and possibly a lot of first-time viewers. Feel free to like the video, share it, all that fun stuff. We're just trying to get the info out there. We will transition to talk about expected impacts and where Derik's going to go post up and what we're going to be looking, what to expect with our page here and all of our other social media platforms in the next couple days as we are gearing up for landfall and the immediate aftermath of Milton.
So the rainfall page is not updating, but I would expect, over the next, through landfall, Tampa could see around 10 inches of rain between now and then. So that could be 2 to 4 inches potentially. And some of that will kind of come and go, but it's going to be pretty wild. Again, the worst coming though when the hurricane gets there. We'll start to see that rainfall really pick up. The timing's kind of slowed down a little bit, so I would say around noon on Wednesday is when I would expect the amount of rain to really pick up.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we've kind of looked at what we can potentially see coming up here. Let's kind of break down what you think likely impacts are for folks that are choosing not to evacuate. Hopefully, again, we're highly encouraging anybody who is watching this from Florida who live in a zone where you got the mandatory evacuation notice today to, if you can, please evacuate. Again, storm surge is the reason why that mandatory evacuation is out. But for the folks who are sticking out, they're staying there from Tampa through Orlando, through the East Coast, like what are potential impacts? We'll start with wherever immediate landfall is going to be.
Yeah, so again, right now the National Hurricane Center, which is what I would go off of, says it's going to make landfall in St. Petersburg. Worst case scenario for Tampa Bay. My forecast is a little bit further south than that. We'll see how that pans out. But I don't know if it really matters that much, in all honesty. The red area is where you can expect hurricane force winds at landfall. You can see how wide of an area. So that's all the way up to the Crystal River area, and then all the way south of Sarasota, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, that area. If it landfalls that far north, then maybe you don't get as much. But if it landfalls down here, obviously that would pull that hurricane force wind field into your area. So in honesty too, if it landfalls a little further south, it might be a little stronger, a little less wind shear for it to encounter the further south it actually goes. But impacts anywhere near the center, expect on the coast wind gust probably in the neighborhood of 130 miles an hour, maybe a little stronger than that. So maybe 140, somewhere right in there. But devastating would be the way to describe that. Catastrophic would be another great word for that. Expect the storm surge to be, again, if it's north of Tampa Bay, expect 10 to 15 foot of water in Tampa Bay. So that's a tremendous amount of inundation into the downtown Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg area.
Yeah, that's inundation that hasn't been seen in the
Yep,
modern time.
nope. So, expect just, just think about all the infrastructure that's down on the surface of the ground that will be underwater. And water and electronics and all of our technology, it just doesn't get along very well. So expect some serious issues with that. Now, again, if it's a little further south, you might see a little less water in Tampa Bay. So you might see initially the water recedes and goes out of the bay, and then you see it come back in from a negative to a positive storm surge as the hurricane moves up, further inland, and the pressure gradient can let that kind of pull in. But I would only expect a handful of feet, 3, maybe 5 feet, something like that. So be much less. But again, we won't know until 12 hours before landfall, if that. It might even be 6 hours before landfall on which side of the bay it's actually going to make landfall on. And so, just plan for the worst and hope for the best, I think is the best thing to take away from this. But expect conditions starting Wednesday morning. Expect some tropical storm force winds, some squally weather, maybe some tornadoes. I haven't really talked a lot about that, but could be some tornadoes Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and then by I don't know, probably 2, 3 o'clock. I mean, it's going to be heavy rain, strong winds, and then by 10 p.m. it's going to be full on hurricane and very bad hurricane at that. And then same thing, Orlando. Just expect it to be 4 hours later than the Tampa area. If it landfalls here, it's going right over Orlando. So Kissimmee, Disney, Deltona, this whole area is going to be. There's going to be a path of wind that's going to cause a lot of devastation all the way from St. Petersburg all the way across and then off the coast. And then the system really begins to weaken after it crosses the peninsula.
Yeah, there's a lot of wind shear out in the Atlantic, so it's going to fizzle out pretty quick. But yeah, the damage will be done. I mean, obviously the most intense wind damage that would likely occur would be on the west coast of Florida versus the east coast. But I think a mass power outage event is likely. And with
5 million people in Orlando, and the majority of them on this track would probably lose power.
Yeah, and just a reminder of Helene was not even 2 weeks ago. The resources are stretched a little thin at the moment, so we're trying. It'll be a kind of a patience game on that. So, So those are our basic expectations. I mean, obviously, I'm sure the local news has been, if you're in Florida, has been bringing up expectations. We'll continue to, bring our expected impacts going to tomorrow as well. I'm sure we'll have our forecast videos really going to focus in on Milton, and also Derik will be heading down tomorrow. So it's kind of get into that. We should have some live or pseudo live sometimes, as live as we can, reporting from you, Derik. So kind of break down what your plan is, where you're planning to head out, and what to expect here on our social media platforms here over the next 48 to 72 hours.
Yeah, so I'm flying into Tallahassee. I land there around 1:30 tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to grab a rental car and rip my way down to Tampa Bay. Ideally, I'd love to have some reporting by Tuesday evening, just to kind of show what the scene looks like, which should be vacant in downtown Tampa Bay. But we're going to kind of share what that looks like and really start to do some coverage around that. I also plan to do at least a little bit of a quick look around the path of Helene and what some of that wind damage looked like, because we'll be within 30 miles of that whenever we land on our plane. So it's going to be a wild afternoon, no doubt about it. and kind of really just getting prepared. So we'll get there in time to get a good night's rest tomorrow night. Wednesday morning, first thing, it's scouting. So we're going to start, honing in the forecast, figuring out where this is going to make landfall. We'll do some early morning shots for you of the coast, kind of showing you that what I expect might be a little bit of a lift in the water levels. Probably not a lot yet, but a little bit. And we'll kind of start to show some of those big waves coming in, and really kind of starting to look at some of that. And then from there, we're just gonna get ready to hunker down. Find us a safe place where the water is what kills. So we got to stay out of the water, but find us a safe place where we can, really record the full impacts of this hurricane, but at the same time, stay as reasonably safe as possible. And so we'll find our location, hunker down, and then try to report live as this thing comes in. And so the goal is to live stream as long as possible, if not for the whole event of the eye coming in and making landfall in Florida.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty close to having a sustained stream in the past, but sometimes the more severe hurricanes do have some issue. I put up a comment earlier saying, "Be sure to get insurance on the rental car." Oh, we do.
Yeah, and I'm not going to intentionally try to destroy it, so we'll most likely it'll be just fine. But you never know. But yes, definitely did get the insurance package.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty. Again, if you follow us, if you guys are watching us right now, you're obviously watching on YouTube, X, and Facebook. But we do have Instagram and TikTok as well. I believe a lot of this conversation will be probably segmented out on the TikTok a little bit later. Chances are it'll be Taylor doing a lot of interviewing and checking in stuff. But we should have a pretty busy couple days here. We're going to try to keep you guys updated as much as humanly possible. Again, I feel like we got a lot of new viewers here just today. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And we're just trying to give it to you guys is pretty much what we're seeing, what we're expecting, and try not to make it too scary, but also we got to keep it pretty honest here. And again, if you guys are watching and you're in the evacuation zone, you probably should get ready to get out of town. I know I saw today that the traffic notably increased in the Tampa area once Milton hit Category 5 status about midday. So
it's a good alert. The alert bell went off with that one.
Yeah, people are taking this one pretty seriously. So, all right. Anybody has any questions? Feel free to put in the chat. And if not, you have anything else that you want to get into here, Derik, before we wrap this up?
No, I think again this is going to be a major hurricane impact. There it is, right there. There's the eye. This is water vapor. That's got a little color to it now. Again, expecting I expect that we're going to see it intensify some this evening, and then again gradual weakening. But I don't think it really matters. It's gotten too strong now. So expecting a pretty intense landfalling hurricane somewhere from Fort Myers to Tampa Bay. So
yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will have another update. Probably, if you check on our stories on Instagram and Facebook, we'll probably post some updates here and there. Maybe some posts on Facebook this evening, if anything. I know there'll be a new cone that comes out this evening. We'll make sure we get that posted out. But tomorrow we'll be updating as frequently as we can. We'll have another video, our live forecast video at noon, and we should be able to start discussing with Derik some point tomorrow afternoon once he's getting to Florida, gets his rental car, and starts hitting the road. And we'll just be doing updates from there. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Check us out on all our social media platforms. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, here on Facebook, YouTube, all that fun stuff. So you don't miss out on that. And any Hail Trace subscribers, you will be getting alerted when we do go live. So make sure you don't miss out on that. So I think with that, we are going to wrap this up. Thanks to everybody, and we will